I recently rewatched Paranormal Activity with one of my best friends from college, and I forgot how good this movie is. It is definitely a masterclass in found footage horror. I truly believe it's my generation's Blair Witch Project, even though it may not be to the same extent. I really believe that first paranormal movie captured something special, especially with the marketing, because they really made that movie feel like it was real. And I know that the internet was around back then when Paranormal Activity came out, and you could find out that it wasn't real, not the same as when the Blair Witch Project came out, where the internet was just coming onto the scene. However, my counter argument to that would be that smartphones weren't as prevalent as they are now. The information was as readily available as it is today. So if you wanted to find out information about a movie, you really had to go out of your way to find that information. Otherwise, it would just be what you saw in the trailer and the word of mouth that you would have between your friends. And on top of that, since I grew up in Carlsbad, California, where the movie was filmed, everybody in high school was talking about it. Like, did you see that movie that was filmed here in Carlsbad? Like, it's real ghosts in that house. That's the kind of impact that that movie had on me. And maybe that's because I grew up in Carlsbad where the movie was filmed, and that added an extra layer of mystery and allure. But I think it's important to look back and appreciate the marketing for what it is of this movie, because there was definitely a part of me going into this movie thinking that it was real. But let's go ahead and talk about the movie itself and why I think it's so scary itself. The number one thing that's awesome about this horror film is that it is not built on a foundation of jump scares. Meaning, you're not gonna get a loud bang and pop up every 5 minutes in this movie like most horror movies in the 2020s. Excuse me, in the 2000s. This movie relies a lot more on dread and dragging you along this string of suspense, and I love that because it really builds up to something big at the end. The analogy I like to use is putting one brick at a time to build a wall, because that's truly how this movie feels. And if you don't understand what I mean by that, let me explain. Instead, this movie goes for creepy moments like the Ouija board scene, where you see the Ouija board handle move around and then it goes on fire, and then the scene cuts to something else. So there's not a huge payoff in the moment, but they just keep adding things like that, and it amounts to something really big at the end. So that's why I like to use that analogy about the wall and putting one brick at a time, because it really is like that. Sometimes you hear footsteps in the hallway. Sometimes you see the door moving. Sometimes you see the lights flickering in the background. All of those individual things represent a brick, because it's not something massive like a jump scare or a monster or some big payoff in a movie, but it's just a brick. And then you add another one, and then another one, and then it all combines to something big, like this scene that made me jump in my bed and curl into a little ball. And it's this scene right here where you start to hear footsteps and you're starting to get ready for something big, and then it kind of settles down, but you see the light turn on in the background, and then you hear the footsteps again, but then the footsteps speed up like a sprint, and then the door slams, and I freaking jumped in that moment. Oh my god, bro. That scene was so well done, and you know why? Because it gave me that claustrophobic feel. When you hear those footsteps, instead of it just being a classic scene where you hear something in the hallway and then maybe a jump scare or it cuts to something else, the genius of this scene is that you hear the footstep, it stops, it starts again, and then it sprints at you, so you get this feeling like it's cornering you down and there's nowhere to run, but you can't see it. I totally forgot about that scene, and when I rewatched it with my friend, I'm telling you, I curled up into a ball. Bro, that's what's so awesome about this movie, is that it will have you second guessing. Like, I live in this big ass attic, and there are definitely dark corners and little passageways that are extremely dark, and this movie exposes those fears. And obviously, we gotta talk about the ending, which I believe is one of the best horror endings ever, which is funny because it's very similar to the Blair Witch Project, which is also very known for its classic horror ending. But I think that I like it for different reasons than most people, because when I watched it with my friend, he really likes the end jump scare where you see the face pop up on the screen. That might be the least effective part in my opinion. For me, what I enjoyed so much about it was the ambiguity, the mystery of it all. The fact that it's off screen and you have no idea what the hell is happening. Like, you see the wife get up and she's sleepwalking, but she's just standing there, which is super creepy. Then she goes away, and then you hear these loud, horrific screams. And then he gets out, runs after her, then you hear him scream, and then everything goes silent, and you're like, what the is happening? And then you hear the footsteps again. Oh my god, all of that stuff was super effective to me. Then you see her come and do the face at the end, and I think that is still effective, and I do appreciate it. But for me, those footsteps and those screams are what haunted my dreams. I remember when I was living in California, in Carlsbad, in that house, hearing those footsteps. Oh my god, if I wanted to get a drink of water in the middle of the night, screw that. I'm going to have cotton mouth that night, because I am not going out there. I could hear those screams. I thought that demon was in my house for sure. So to this day, this is a fantastic found footage horror movie that I think stands the test of time. It is still effective to this day. I was scared as hell when I watched it with my friend. And as far as the story goes, I think they had an above average story for a found footage movie, because nowadays found footage films are just terrible, cheap, gimmicky movies that we don't really appreciate as much because it is now a oversaturated market. But I think that first Paranormal Activity movie was able to capture that magic from the Blair Witch Project before it became an oversaturated genre in the horror genre. But like I said, I love this movie and it will always have a special place in my heart because I love Carlsbad, so I love Paranormal Activity. Anyways, that's it for today's video, but before I leave, I wanted to mention, if you guys like my movie reactions, check out the link in the description below. Enzo Reacts is my separate channel where I do movie reactions, so definitely go ahead and check that out. Subscribe to that and subscribe here if you're not already. Give this video a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments, what do you guys think about Paranormal Activity? What do you think about the franchise? And I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.